Hi, it's Simon here. In this video we're checking out the fundamentals of one of our most used sound effects, the whoosh. We will check out what the building blocks of them are, how to create those building blocks, and finally how to use the whoosh sound effect in a visual context. But before we dive into all of that, if you're new to sound design and you're working on your first showreel, I have a free cheat sheet for you linked in the description below. This covers what to think about when you create your showreel, how long it should be, what to cover in it, and you also get a checklist for different things so you don't forget anything when you create it. So go ahead and download that, and now let's dive into the building blocks of whooshes. One of the biggest reasons that whooshes are such a used sound effect is that they are so versatile. They can be used for all kinds of transitions, they can grab the attention of a listener and let them know that something is about to happen, they can be used for all kinds of movements, and they can also be used for emotional impact. So you can think of the building blocks of whooshes like this. BPT. B stands for build up, P stands for peak, and T stands for tail. So you build up the energy into a peak and then you have a tail afterwards. And if we take a look at a visual representation of a whoosh, they typically look something like this. So you start with a build up in the beginning, then we have the peak, and then we have the tail afterwards. And since whooshes can be used for so many things, as I said before, they will definitely be made up of different kinds of source sounds and have different kinds of envelopes and stuff. But these three building blocks will basically always be there. You will build it up, you will have a peak, and then you will have a tail. And you can also think of this as tension and release. So you build up the tension into a peak and then you have a release afterwards. Depending on what kind of sound you do, all of this will change, but you can always come back to this blueprint BPT, the three building blocks of whooshes, the build up, the peak, and the tail. Alright, so now when we know a little bit more about the building blocks of whooshes, let's see if we can create one from scratch. And I will do this in Faceplant, but you can of course use any kind of synth or sampler for this purpose. So I will build something very simple to begin with, just a little bit of noise, add some randomness to that so we don't get this machine gun feeling. I will add a curve modulator, and then I will take the gain and reduce it to 0 and modulate it with the curve. Set it to around 50%. And now when we play it, it's just this noise burst, basically. So maybe a little bit loud, so reduce this a little bit. So we don't have a whoosh at this stage, so let's just edit this curve a little bit and see what we can come up with. And we just have that in the back of our head, the BPT, the build up, the peak, and the tail, and we just create something very similar to the visual representation that we saw earlier. So something like this maybe. Let's try it out. Yeah. Basically a noise whoosh. It's super simple to set up when you know this and you know how to sculpt the sound. And now we can of course continue to build upon this idea, and we can use this curve to modulate different things. We can add a little bit of stereo movement. Maybe we can go from brown noise up to white noise or something like that. Yeah, really simple but really effective noise whoosh. And if you now want to take this a step further and create different kinds of whooshes, it's just a matter of add different sounds to this. So if we add a sampler and then we drag in some water here, and we can bypass the noise for now. And now we have a water whoosh. Maybe extend it a bit. Maybe change the envelope a little bit. And then we can of course add in the noise again. And then you can tweak it to your likings. And if you want to continue on this road, you can add fire or electricity or tonal elements from brass or strings or any kind of musical instrument. Or you can use your own voice or animal recordings or whatever you like to create different kinds of whooshes. Really simple, but it always come back to those building blocks and the blueprint, the build up, the peak and the tail, the tension and the release. Alright, so now we know a little bit about the theory of whooshes. We know about the 3 building blocks, the build up, the peak and the tail, and the tension of release that they create. And we also know how to sculpt a basic whoosh sound. It's time to take a look at how we can use these sound effects in some kind of context. So I have created this really short sound redesign that I thought I walk you through. And in advance, I want to apologize for all the fans out there for Warhammer 40k. This redesign is from that franchise, and I have to be totally honest, I don't know this franchise that well. I found this clip and I felt it was really cool, and I got really inspired by it, and it has some good scenes where we can like explain how I use whooshes and stuff. So yeah, I want to apologize in advance that I don't know more about the franchise than I do, but it is what it is. So I will play through this redesign first with all the whooshes enabled, so you can hear how that sounds, and then I bypassed it so you can hear how it sounds without them. And then I walk you through the different sounds and how I created them and why I placed them where I placed them. So with the whooshes, it sounds like this. And without the whooshes. And yeah, absolutely, it sounds fine when you bypass the whooshes too, but it lacks a little bit of power. It lacks a little bit of guidance for what I should listen to, and that's one of the things that I use whooshes for a lot, and that's a really common use case for whooshes, as I said in the beginning of this video, where you can grab the attention of the listener and point them to something that happens in the story that's important for them to know, but they might miss out on if they're not getting some guidance from the audio. So we have one scene like that just in the beginning here. So we have this monster jumping up over these stone rocks here, and this happens really far down in the visuals, so you might miss it if you don't know it's important. And the thing is that this creature is the main threat for our hero, basically. So it's really important that the audience know that this threat comes in here. But if we don't help the visuals a little bit, because we have our hero running here and we have some smaller creatures attacking him here and stuff, the audience might miss that. So we can use a little bit of a whoosh to just emphasize the movement of that creature. So that's exactly what I did here. I used some wind noise basically, and just a simple envelope, and it sounds like this. So super simple stuff, but it just emphasizes that this creature is coming, basically. It's not super loud in the mix or anything, but it just emphasizes that movement a little bit. If we just bypass that, it's easy to miss out on that thing. And that's the first whoosh that we hear in the redesign. The second one is here when our hero gets attacked by this little creature that jumps up from the side on him, and he basically just waves him off with the back of his hand. It's not important. The important in this story is this monster here in the middle. But we have a little bit of like transport section here in between that the monster comes into the scene, and then when they collide here. So, and in this like transport scene here, we have this little guy attacking, so we can use that space to add in one more whoosh to just paint a picture of the movement of that creature. But here I use just a simple EQ to filter out the low end. That just makes the sound feel like it fits a smaller creature. It doesn't have the big body, so it doesn't need the low end in it, basically. Other than that, it's just a volume envelope here too, and it's just following the movement. Here is the pinnacle or the peak of the whoosh where we hit him, and then he just falls off the side, and then we just fade out the whoosh, basically. And the next one here is this whoosh here where they collide the first time. So this is a big one, and for this I used 3 layers of sounds on top of each other, but they are all going through this group here. So I usually use this technique for using a group track and then put the different sounds in that, and then I can put the volume envelope on the group, and this enables me to add in tons of different sound and very fluidly try out different sounds in the group, because they are all sounds in this group are getting filtered by this volume envelope. So even though in this case I add just a continuous wind sound, that will be shaped by this volume envelope too. So I can quickly add sounds and try out different sounds because I know that all of them follow the right motion together with the visuals. We have the build up here and then the release here and the peak just when they collide. So it will all like fit the visuals no matter what kind of sound I throw in here, and that means that I can just focus on the right character of the sound. So here I use some wind, and then I think it's like you have hit something with an arrow and you pull it out of it. I'm actually not sure, and that's not important for me either. The important part is if it serves the picture and the story that I'm trying to tell. So when I choose different sound for a scene like this, I just scroll through my library and try to find stuff that feels natural to what I see. And as you see in this redesign, I mainly use like noise sounds basically and wind sounds, and that's because this is an open scene. The location here is like just city ruins basically. We have an open sky here through the window, and we can see here that we are like in a big open location basically. Since the point of my whooshes in this is to grab a little bit of the attention from the audience and point them to different stuff and enhance difference and empowering different edit points or points in the story that needs a little bit more power, I want the whooshes to just glue in and blend well with the scene that we're seeing. Because if I would choose more tonal elements instead of like musical tones from instruments or synths or glitchy tones, they wouldn't really fit this location that we're in, and that would tell the audience that, well, something is really off here. I can't like connect the stuff that I hear together with the visuals. So that's like the thing to keep in mind all the time, is to just serve the story the best way you can. What does it need? Well, if it's need some kind of contrast to tell that something really odd is about to happen, then you might choose sound that doesn't really fit into the visuals at all. But in this case, where we just want to emphasize different stuff, it's better to use stuff that kind of fits into and blend well with the visuals and all the other sounds. So in an open location like this, it's mainly like noise sounds and wind sounds that I choose to work with. And then I just try to find stuff that works for that. So this archery sound here sounds like this. It has a little bit more movement compared to the wind sound. That's more continuous. And then we have a shorter whoosh here. This is also a weapon sound. I think it's like when you hit the ground with a crossbow or something like that. So it's shorter. It's just to emphasize the peak of the whoosh. So together, and it just like that big first clash. And the next scene here where I put a whoosh is here, and this is the exact same thing. We have 3 sounds layered on top of each other going through this group where I have the volume envelope here, and it sounds like this. And this is more continuous because we don't have the collision of the blades. The creature misses the marine, so it's just more of a continuous movement, and it doesn't have the same kind of character. So I try to just fit the visuals once again and just enhance them a little bit. Then the big creature here just stands up at its full length and just collecting all the power for the big final hit here. So here is another noise whoosh. This is way slower, so it starts at -20 dB instead of what we saw here. Here is 0 dB. So it starts from a higher point, which creates this illusion of a slower movement basically. It doesn't ramp up as much in amplitude or volume. And that gets layered together with this third big clash, and this is basically the same thing that we saw in the second and first ones. It's 2 layers of sounds going through this volume envelope with no further processing or anything, and it sounds like this. And those are of course getting layered then together with the sword clashes and everything like that. So yeah, as you see, it's not like brain surgery. It's more or less try to find sounds that fit the visuals and try to find sounds that complement the story that you're trying, and that's the most important part here. You see, it's nothing complex or advanced. It's basically wind noises that just layered together with some other stuff, but they are placed here like we have one important important section here where we need to emphasize these creatures coming in. Then we have a little bit of transport section here. We have a little bit of space where you can use it. Because if you would add whooshes everywhere, you would basically tell the audience that something is happening all the time and everything is important all the time everywhere. And if everything is important, nothing is important. So you need to pick like key moments in the story that you want to emphasize, and those are the ones that you can emphasize. You have to choose, and then you sync those sounds to the visuals, and then you find the sounds that complement the visuals the best way you can. So find the spots, create the sync, and then you add different layers to that sound that you need for telling the story that you want. So nothing super crazy and a lot of fun. So I highly suggest you start out and try to work with your whooshes in some kind of visual context. All right, that's it for this video. I hope you found it valuable. If you're new to sound design and you want a couple of tips along the way for how you can create your show reel, download the cheat sheet that's linked in the description below. And if you want a more in-depth walkthrough of how I use sound design and especially whooshes in a real world context, you can check out this video where I do it quite a lot. All right, take care of each other. I see you in the next one.